And again, welcome to Family Tech Talk Night. And we'll get started in just a second. If you could please sign in at the sheet on the right. There's a link. There's a link to a sign-in sheet. Also, if you have a minute, let us know in the chat where you are dialing in from tonight. Let us know in the chat where you're dialing in from. My name is Lynette. Yep, dialing in. My name is Lynette Owens, and I am the founder and global director of Trend Micro's Internet Safety for Kids and Families program. Dialing in actually from New Jersey tonight, but I normally reside in the Boston area. And I'm joined by my colleague, Ron Russak. Ron, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Name's Ron Russak. I'm a CISSP, which is Certified Information Security Specialist. Had that certification for about 10 years. I've also been with Trend Micro for about 10 years through many iterations, but doing cybersecurity and computers for over 30 years.
Great. So again, if you're just joining us, there's a link in the chat to sign in and let us know you are here with us this evening. And we will get started. So a little bit about, just want to say welcome, first of all, to schools, all the schools that are joining us this evening. And we know that people might be joining us a little bit later. If you are and would like to listen to tonight's session in Spanish, please select the globe icon at the bottom of your screen and choose Spanish as your audio. And you will be listening to our colleague Marcela de la Garma, who will be conducting tonight's session in Spanish. And again, if you're just joining us, please sign in the link that you see in the chat and let us know you are here. So welcome. A few ground rules before we get started. Again, if you'd like to listen in Spanish, please choose the globe icon and choose Spanish as the language you'd prefer. Sign in at the link in the chat that we just posted. And the session's going to run anywhere between 75 to 90 minutes. It really depends on you. It depends on the number of questions that you have for us. We will make ourselves available for as long as necessary to address any of your concerns. Yes, a recording of this session is going to be available at the close of tonight. We will make that available to the PTO, PTA, or school administrator that organized the event for your school tonight. So please check in with them because we will make it available to that person as soon as it's available for posting. We encourage you to submit questions throughout the evening, and please put it in the Q&A rather than in the chat. It can get lost in the chat because we're going to be asking things of you throughout the night, and questions can get lost in the chat. So please post your questions in English or in Spanish using the Q&A function. And finally, at the close of the session, we encourage you to give us feedback. It should only take a few minutes, and we will share with you a link where you can provide that feedback at the end.
And don't worry about signing up for the link. As you sign in, we will not be adding you to a marketing database. You will not be contacted because of that. But the good thing is if you do participate in the survey at the end of the program, we will be giving away 5 copies of Trend Micro Internet Security for home use, and each copy has 5 licenses.
Yep.
So,
and we'll talk about that in a minute, later on today. So we'd like to get to know you a little bit better, and by using the polling options, please tell us the answer to the following. Ron, you want to take us through this?
Sure. So we get an idea to make sure we're addressing the right crowd. How old is your oldest child? 5 years old or younger, 6 to 10, 11 to 14, and 15 or older. We're not asking for the youngest, we're asking for the oldest. And go ahead and please complete that.
How old is your oldest child? Okay. I think it looks like we have a clear winner
Answer.
here. Yes, absolutely. We're going to end the poll here and share the results. So it looks like
A
the
little different than yesterday.
Yeah, majority.
Yesterday we had a younger children more.
Yeah. Yep. But that's a sweet spot, 11 to 14 years old. And eventually those of you with younger kids are going to have 11 to 14-year-old kids. So that's great. It helps us. It helps us a lot.
Going to get there pretty quick. Another question. What are you most interested in discussing? Managing the screen time for my kids, helping your kids stick with age-appropriate content, dealing with online bullying, getting ideas for positive uses, and not sure, just here to learn something new. If you can go ahead and click one of those to give us an idea. We'll actually cover most of this in the presentation anyway.
This is great. And I think, you know, a lot of times based on the ages of your children, one of these topics tends to rise higher to the top of your concerns versus others. And we know that as children move through the different different phases of their lives, different issues will challenge them, and and they'll be able to enjoy different benefits also.
So the results.
Yep.
A little bit more split, age-appropriate content, and not sure, just learning something new are the top ones. But we're going to cover a lot of this already in the program.
Yes. Excellent. Okay. Great. Thank you for sharing that with us. Again, my name's Lynette, and I'm joined by my colleague, Ron. I actually have two children who are now a little bit older. They're in their teens. But we've been doing this work for 15 years as an organization, and we've learned a lot over that period of time. So just want to set some expectations for the evening and talk to you a little bit about our approach to teaching kids how to be great digital citizens. You know, we're very much in favor of not sugarcoating things, telling you the truth about the risks, but also about the benefits that come with using the internet for anyone of any age. But we are not really into fear mongering. We don't think that's particularly helpful for you or for your kids. I think as parents, we're already predisposed to be worrying anyway. So we don't want to necessarily contribute any more to that. What we do like to do is tell you the truth of how things are and give you enough information, enough best practices and advice and guidance that we've learned over the years through our own expertise, but also because we've been talking with parents for so many years. We like to share what we've also learned from them with you. So that is our approach to this. I think the second is to be clear on what we mean by digital citizenship. Digital citizenship is definitely about helping kids learn what the risks are and how to avoid them. Safety and security are an important element of teaching anyone how to be a great digital citizen. But it also includes digital literacy, which is literally, how do I use these tools? Even if I understand that protecting my privacy online is important, where do I find the privacy settings? How do I actually turn them on? What is two-step verification and why is it important for me? Those are some examples of digital literacy. It also includes how we behave towards others, how we behave within the context of rules and norms that govern online communities and spaces. And finally, very often when we talk to kids about being great digital citizens, it's often a laundry list of what not to do. It's very important for us as parents and as anyone who cares for young people that we balance that conversation of what not to do with the conversations about what they should be doing with technology, with time online, what they could be using it for their own benefit, for the benefit of others, and for the benefit of the world around them. So the way we like to approach quite a range of topics that we're going to cover tonight is in these four categories. The first is to be online. And what we mean by this is, how do you set the right environment? A lot of that conversation will be based on tech tools that you could be using in your home to set your child up for success. How do you set up rules, and how do you set a good example? That's the start. On top of that, we will obviously discuss a lot about safety. How do you protect your privacy, your personal information, and even your physical selves? Next, it includes a conversation about kindness. And obviously, kindness is important in terms of how we behave towards others. But we also want to remember that with the advent of social media, this can cause a lot of issues for lots of people, but especially young people who are impressionable, who really live and understand the world through the lens of social media. So we've got to remember that when we talk about kindness, we should direct it to others, but we've got to think about directing that kindness towards ourselves too. And finally, being savvy, which is really about how do we teach good habits and how do we encourage good uses of the internet. Again, the conversation around mastery is where this falls. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Ron, to take us through setting up the environment.
So talking about setting up the environment, we're talking about at home. As you may remember, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, we didn't think about working from home that much. We had offices that we went to and the children went to school. That all changed with the pandemic. So a few things to remember is, for your eyes and lighting, you follow the 30-30-30 rule. What that means is every 30 minutes, you should spend 30 seconds to look at something 30 feet away. This keeps your eyes from being stuck at close focus for so long. Some people have also added blue light glasses, which means they're yellow tinted, which cancels blue. A posture for seating. When we first started the pandemic, your children may have been sitting at the dining room table on the dining room, typing like this, which is not very good, with your hands up here. The same rules that applied in your office with the keyboard, even with your hands and the eyes straight ahead for your monitor, is important. And of course, take breaks. If you think about your child in school, every 50 minutes or so, they have a break when they change classes. It's when we're at home, do we still take a break every hour, 10 minutes, get up and walk around? I have a smartwatch that reminds me every 30 minutes to get up and move around. These are some of the things we have to think about because we had them maybe at work, but now we have to apply them at home. So things to consider. Moving on, part of the environment is also setting up your internet for success. Before the pandemic, we didn't really think about setting up our network at home because it was just there. It was there for entertainment. Now it's there for our work and for our school all at the same time. So a few things to remember: to limit your access to your router by using the encryption and requiring passwords. All routers by default have an encryption program and password that's required to sign in. So, and most importantly, change your default admin password, because routers have known admin passwords. They're published on the internet. Take you 5 seconds to find it. If somebody can get into your router, they can own your internet. So change your administrator password and set your Wi-Fi password. Today, most modern routers, which these days kind of come in the shade of black, if you're using blue and green or white, your router's too old. You need to update it. And what do I mean your router? If you're using your own router, you have control over it and can keep it up to date. If you're using your cable companies or DSL providers wireless router, you have no control over it. They set it up for you, they leave. It could be unsecure. Your neighbors could be using it. People could be getting in and taking over all of your machines. If you have your own router, you can control it. Most modern routers these days have a guest network, which allows you to separate the network. That means you can put your children's friends, when they come over to visit, on the guest network, and the router automatically blocks access to your network. So the friends cannot get into your work machine. They're on two separate networks sharing the same internet. This is also very good because we have smart TVs and Internet of Things. There has been some incidents where TVs have been used to spy on people. If you put your TVs on the guest network, it is still isolated from your own personal network. Other things we can do these days is use a Wi-Fi extender. There are many brands of both the routers and the extenders, but if you tend to go with the same brand, the extender will usually configure itself off the master router and you really don't have to do anything. Makes it a lot easier. The extender is to reach that far corner of your house on the second floor, which is opposite end of the house from where your router is. So extenders may be important. And of course, another thing to do is possibly stagger the use of the time. Your children's time to do their homework may be a time where you're not doing your work or where streaming for TV is not allowed, so that we have ample bandwidth for everybody. If you have a small pipe, as we call it, or a low-speed connection, you may not be able to stream two TVs and do your office work and your children doing their homework all at the same time. So you can stagger the use of the time. Other things to consider for your security includes using security software on all devices. That means not just your computer, but also on your tablets and your phones. About the only thing that doesn't have security software is a Chromebook. Everything else needs to have security software installed. If you can, turn on your firewall. If you are using security software, it will usually handle the firewall for you. Strong passwords. If you're working, you know this rule because chances are your office enforces you to use strong passwords. Strong passwords we'll also get into on the next slide to further define what they are. Something more recent is multi-factor authentication. This is where you may log in and then a text is sent to your phone and you have to approve via the text message, or you have to input your code. That's called two-factor authentication. That prevents somebody who gets your password from impersonating you, because when they try to log in, you're going to get the notice to do the multi-factor authentication, and it's like, wait a minute, I didn't sign in. Even services such as Google and Yahoo are now doing multi-factor authentication. You can also use a virtual private network. Many of us have heard of this in our work environment. It allows us to sit at home, use a virtual private network to connect to the office resources. You can use a home-based virtual private network. There's multiple brands available, and some security software includes options to add virtual private networks. What does this do? It makes companies on the internet not exactly know where you are. all of your IP addresses, the address that you get to your house, are pretty much known by most companies. They can pinpoint almost down to the zip code where you're located. This helps them target ads specifically in your area. If you use a VPN, you could appear out of state as your location. The downside of it is many companies also know who these VPN providers are, and they don't allow you to use them, which defeats the purpose of the VPN. But if you learn what you can and can't do on it, you can be a little bit more anonymous when you use a VPN. Now, we talked about strong passwords, and that's the next thing after update, update, update. The second Tuesday of every month in the tech world is called Patch Tuesday. That is the day that Microsoft and Adobe release all their patches for the month, as long as there's no corrections, which there usually is. But that means every Wednesday, every Windows computer in your house should be updated. But don't forget your router. Remember, I asked that you buy your own router. If you have your own router, there are methods to update it as well. As problems are discovered, updates are required to keep your software and network safe.
And I just want to comment here that for those of you with kids using a million different apps on their iPads and their iPhones or Android phones, this includes those too. Make sure those are being updated regularly, because most of the time, those updates are closing up holes that could put their privacy and security at risk.
Mm-hmm. And then we were talking secure passwords. One way to figure out a secure password is to use passphrases and change them off and don't reuse them. I have a password tool because I have probably over 100 passwords in the systems I need to remember. It generates random, but if you don't have that, you might do a passphrase such as MN2B MTPS ! Which means might need to buy more toilet paper soon. And you could change it easily. Might need to 3 buy more toilet paper soon. Might need to 4 buy more toilet paper soon. There's 3 passwords right there. The reason why we say this is that pretty much any password that is in the dictionary, hackers already know. And if anybody ever hacks into a database that has a password stored, it's stored in what's called a hash. They have already dehashed or have the hash of every single word in the dictionary. All, however many million of them, have already been hashed. All they have to do is match the hash they find in somebody's database, and they know what your password is. Something random like this hasn't been hashed yet, so it makes it much more difficult.
And I think this technique also is great with younger kids, since many of you have no older than 11 or to 14-year-olds. They don't have a lot of passwords yet. So using something like a password manager is not necessarily going to be useful for their age. But practicing good skills by coming up with a really fun sentence that they can remember, just use the first letter of each word as the password, is a great way to teach them what a strong password is, and have them change it by coming up with another fun or funny sentence. Mm-hmm. Often.
And different for every system. The other thing we need to remember is to back up and store safely. A lot of people these days use the cloud for backup. Fine, great. It's replicated all around the world. The problem is your password becomes part of the encryption mechanism. If you ever forget your password, your backup is worthless. The companies cannot decrypt it because they don't know what your password was. So if you do use cloud backup, make sure that you document and put that password somewhere safe, not on a sticky note on your desk. Also store safely. If you do backups at home using like a USB drive, put the USB drive somewhere other than the computer. because if somebody smashes your window and grabs your computer, if your backup drive is sitting on top of your computer, they have that too, and you have no backup. So a lot of common sense things that we don't necessarily think about. So make sure you back up your password, at least for your cloud storage. And if you're doing local storage, use them somewhere else. What else can we do? We can use tech tools. There's a lot of tools these days that will help you manage your children's environment. It can help with age-appropriate content, in-app purchases. It can monitor them. Some of these tools can be installed on the router itself. Most modern routers that are name brand have partnered with security companies so that basic security, including possible time management, can be built into your router. So you can make sure that your children can't be online through Wi-Fi at certain times of the day. It can also protect you from various other things because it may include security software. There's also software, of course, in all the app stores and the sites. As a gift to you, Trend Micro has a free, on the next slide, application. Oh, we'll get to that in a few minutes.
Yeah.
Here's some examples of some other tech tools. Lynette, you want to start?
Absolutely. So I'd love to hear from you, parents in the audience. How many of you have children using Apple devices? Let us know in the chat. Any Apple families out there? Please let us know in the chat who's an Apple family. Because if you are, and you're still concerned about things like age-appropriate content or the amount of time they're spending on Snapchat, or whether or not you've allowed them to use TikTok, iOS Screen Time is a wonderful tool that you should become familiar with. And it's already something you don't have to pay for or download additionally. It's already there in the settings. You just need to set up each of your children with an iTunes account underneath yours, and you select the child, and you can begin to explore the different ways of, making sure that their time online is healthy, that they're not using it too much, and they're using the kinds of things that are age appropriate. You can filter the kinds of apps they can download from the iTunes store based on age ratings as well. So they wouldn't be able to download anything that's not appropriate for their age if you set it through this setting. And one thing I want to say about all of these tech tools, I'm going to run through a whole bunch of them from some of the most favorite apps and devices that your kids use. They're really good to help you do some of the things like limit screen time, like forbid them from downloading certain apps. But the most important thing about the tools is that they give you a way to have what's the most important tool you have in your tool chest, and that is the ability to have communication with your child. If you notice that they have been doing their homework a little bit late at night, it's taking them a little bit longer, but at the same time, you notice that they're on Instagram quite a bit, maybe longer than they should be because they have homework. Well, that gives you insight and information to sit down and have a conversation. I noticed that it's taking you a little bit later to get homework done, and you're tired and you really need your sleep to be, ready for the next day. So maybe we need to talk about what you're doing here with Instagram. Please look at these tools not as a replacement for conversations, but a way to enhance those conversations. For those of you, any Android families out there, any parents whose kids are using the Samsung phones or the Google Pixel phones, let us know in the chat. Are you an Android family? Yes, okay. If you're not already familiar, Google also launched their version of iOS Screen Time called Family Link. And just last week, they have updated it. So you used to have to download an app in order to do all of this similar things like like Apple's Screen Time. But now you can do it from a web browser, so you don't actually have to have your phone nearby. And you can do things like allow the kinds of apps that they're allowed, I mean, limit the kinds of apps they can download. You can even control what a specific app is doing. Like, don't give that app access to the camera or contact lists on their phones and so on. So we encourage you, without having to go through great detail, we encourage you to take a look at, these are all free apps. Everything we're talking about here is free. Anybody's kids like to watch YouTube? YouTube actually let us know in the chat, and I'm going to guess it's all of you. Yeah, YouTube, the #1 app actually that kids actually use of all ages. So there was a time, and unfortunately I didn't benefit from this when my kids were younger, where they would look up a video that seemed harmless. The scary part was what the video that showed right after the one that they watched. And you just felt like it was the wild, wild west. So they finally, a year and a half ago, launched something, actually just last year, something called a supervised account. And it doesn't matter if you use iPhone, it doesn't matter if you use Android. Anybody with a Google account can set up supervised accounts, meaning depending on the age and maturity of your child, it's up to you. You can start to limit in total the kind of content they'll be able to access on YouTube. So the 3 options are there before you: explore, explore more, or most of YouTube. And that's based on rough range ages between 8 and 11 for explore, around 11 to 14 for explore more, and then up to 17 is most of YouTube. What they're excluding is adult content at that point. So no adult content in any of these 3 settings. So please take a look at that. Again, it's free. If you do a search, they do a great job of explaining how to set that up. So if you weren't aware, and those of you who said you were concerned about age appropriate content, anybody allow their kids to use TikTok yet? Let us know in the chat. And let's say there's a lot more no's than yeses usually. And yes, here come the no's in the chat. And that's okay. Whenever you think your children are ready. But there is an option for you to ease yourself and them into TikTok before allowing them the full experience of TikTok. And that setting is called family pairing. TikTok actually launched this just before the pandemic, and a lot of people are not aware. It sits under a setting called digital well-being. You choose family pairing. You have to download TikTok on both your device and theirs. And yours, when it's designated as the parent device, can start to limit things like the amount of time, the kind of content, and who they can interact with on TikTok. So just an easy way to ease them into TikTok. They're probably begging you. And at some point you might say, okay, but we're going to take this one step at a time. You start with family pairing. Instagram, another favorite, usually as kids get their first phones, around those 11, 12, 13-year-old ages. Technically, you're not supposed to use social media until you're 13. However, we know there are plenty of kids under 13 using social media. And parents are okay with this because they're supervising that. Instagram's made that one step easier for you earlier this year with a supervision setting. So I'm not going to go through the details, but please familiarize yourselves. It's a way for you to monitor. You can't control what they're doing. But again, it gives you visibility and information to have the conversations, the most important tool in your tool chest. Anybody's kids like to use Roblox? I'm fairly sure most of you. This is where we see yeses rather than nos, right? Really fun. Roblox is not a game, but it's a community of gamers and game developers. And most of these games are very innocuous, but please familiarize yourselves with the settings. You can limit who can chat with them in Roblox within an app. You can set up 2-step verification. You're seeing a video here developed by Roblox. Please familiarize yourselves with this ability because a lot of people are not aware of all that they can do. One thing I will say is none of these tools, again, replace your role as a parent. you may still want to check in on them from time to time, because there are things that Roblox can't control. For example, we've heard from parents that their child's avatar is walking through a room, and then they see another avatar in the game, but it's wearing a t-shirt with a very vulgar image or word on it. And that's something that would be very difficult to filter by Roblox. And so that's why, as great as these tools are, they really don't replace your role as a parent. So do check in still from time to time.
And even the YouTube filter may
Correct.
have flaws because
Yes,
content can be
correct.
posted that's inappropriate with a childhood or search on it link, and until enough people report it that it's inappropriate, it's not
Correct.
flagged. So some things can always leak through. None of these are foolproof.
Absolutely. That's right. So Discord is another app, which is basically, anybody hear of Discord? Let us know in the chat. But it became very popular over the course of the last 2 years among younger kids. It was always very popular with older gamers. But Discord is definitely something that became more popular over the last 2 years. And in any case, it's basically like a super chat room capability. And they really just started to improve their online safety settings. They're not quite, I think, at the level of strength as Snapchat and Instagram and Roblox and TikTok. So do pay attention. And even though you can see screenshots here of ways that you can keep them safe, I would say be mindful of it. Same with Xbox and other gaming devices. They have launched new settings, new apps called family settings in the case of Xbox, where you don't even have to go to the room and do it on the Xbox. From the phone, your child may be on the Xbox asking for more time, and you can say yes or no. They want to play with someone they've never met, you can say yes or no. So it's a beautiful thing. A lot of these free apps are available to you. So what Ron was mentioning earlier is that we at Trend, as a technology company who creates security software, have decided to turn some of our engineering resources and our 15 years of knowledge of challenges for families into a product called Trend Micro Family, free to you, that attempts to do a lot of what we talked about in one place. Today, you would have to go to all of those separate apps to do those settings. Our goal is to make that easy to do all in one place. So please give it a try, and we'd love to get your feedback and get it right.
So what we're asking you to do is start that conversation and set the rules. The rules of what technology can they use? When can they use the technology, and for how long? All of these things open that dialogue with your children, and it even includes where and with whom. So what technology? They can use their phone only until bedtime, then they have to turn their phone in. Or yes, what, their phone, and when? How long? How many hours per day? Where? If they're doing YouTube, do they have to do it in the family room where you can keep an eye on them over their shoulder? And with whom? When their friends come over, are they hiding in the bedroom, or are they in the family room where you can eavesdrop on what things are going on? So we're asking you to set these rules and open a dialogue with your children so that they have a clear understanding of what is expected. Another way to figure out how long is to kind of think of how much time you have in a day. There's only 24 hours. A lot of that starts in the green zone with sleep, meals, and exercise time. There's a lot of in the blue with school and homework, reading, and hobbies. Then we start getting into the free time of supporting relationship with families and friends. How much time after all that is left over? Maybe a couple hours or an hour or two, and is that time for them to spend on the internet by themselves? or watching YouTube videos. Think about this, and you can apply this to yourself just as well, because one of the things we're asking is that you also set the example yourself. If you have the rule of no phones at the dinner table, that means you. So you get to set the example. So think about also, what kind of example do you set? Are you talking work at the dinner table? Are you surfing sitting next to your child and exploring things on the internet, or are you actually engaged? So set the example. Next is be safe.
And I'd like to encourage you, if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A about anything. We're going very quickly through some of these items, but we're happy to answer anything that you might be wondering about. So please put that in the Q&A in English or in Spanish.
So talking about be safe, we're talking about privacy settings. Lynette?
Absolutely. So I think it's really important to first of all use them. So you're seeing screenshots here of one of the favorite games of our kids. That is Fortnite. I thought it already passed, but apparently it's still very popular again. And by default, many apps do not, and games and devices don't have it set to the level you might want. So our messages, use them. Every time your kid gets a new app, device, test them to see how long they can find the privacy settings and work with them to set them at the level that will be safe for them, but also still allow them to do the things you want. They're never set the way that you would want them to be set. There are two exceptions to this, by the way. Two apps decided for anyone under the age of 16 that they would set privacy settings at the highest level. And those two apps are TikTok and Instagram. So believe it or not, as much as we fret about those apps, those are two companies who decided they would set it at the highest level. But that is not true of almost everything else your kids are using. The problem with privacy settings is this. They protect your children from people they don't know getting access to whatever it is they're doing on that app or device. But when we think about apps, particularly those that are free, even though we don't pay money to use them, we are still paying with something else. And that something else is, ask your children if they know what that something else is. It is our personal information, because there's a clause in the apps when we download them and we see all that legal language. We don't read any of it. We scroll right to the bottom. And what do? We say, I accept or I agree. But buried in the language of that script is a very simple way to think about it. And that is, you own everything you do on here, but you give us the right, us, the company, to use that information whenever, wherever, forever. Okay, it's not written that way. It's written in legal language, right? And so we're really paying not with money, but our personal information. So using privacy settings protect us from those we don't know, but they don't do anything to protect our privacy from the companies who've created these apps, devices, and games. And that is why it is best to think about your time online as your public life, because somebody is always collecting information about everything we click on and look at and search and watch and comment on and like and so on. And because that's being collected by someone, somebody else might try and hack into that information. So, we, as well as our children, should always assume whatever we're doing online really is not ever private. So behave under that kind. It isn't. No, somebody's always tracking it. Ron, I'm going to hand this one over to you.
So protecting information is how do we know what we're looking at? There's lots of things on the internet that are trying to trick us into giving more information away to people who will abuse it. These are, kind of fake things like poison search results, where a search may come up high and it takes you somewhere completely different. Free offers, free Apple iPad. Nobody's going to give you a free iPad, but they will be happy to take your information and put it to their own use, impersonate you, become, identity theft. And if you give them a credit card to secure it, your credit card is gone. It is now all over the internet for the highest bidder. Other ways to trick you are high interest content, such as cheat codes for Fortnite. Your kids might click on this, figuring out how to get a cheat code. And what happens is it takes them to a site that starts hacking their machine. Same with even fake social media posts, like Lady Gaga found dead in a hotel room. Who's going to click on that? And again, it may take you, it says bbc.co.uk, but the real location may be somewhere at a hacker's bedroom where he's going to proceed to attack your machine just because you pointed your browser at those locations. So again, you got to protect yourself by being savvy and knowing what to click on and what not to click on. And a lot of these fake social media posts I see all the time, especially on Facebook. Now, your kids probably aren't using Facebook, but you may be. You may have even seen fake social media ads such as this. I mean, the criminals are buying ads to trick you into giving up your information, and it's profitable for them.
I would say that if your kids are, which is why you want to use security software on kids' devices in particular, their little fingers might accidentally tap on one of these and didn't mean to.
Mm-hmm. And next. So we have another question for you, another quick survey. Do your kids have their own cell phone? Yes, no, we're thinking about it. Time for another poll. And do we have all the results in?
Nobody's thinking about it. It's just yes or no. Yeah, let's end the poll here. Oh, look at that.
Half and half.
Half
Yep.
and half.
For the age group, that's about right. What
That's
we've been
about right.
finding is it used to be children were getting phones when they were 14 to 15. Now it's more like 10 and 11.
Yes,
I think the pandemic has pushed that number down somewhat.
it absolutely has. Yep, that's correct. So just real quickly about the phones, there's a couple of things that we just want to make sure you parents are having certain conversations with your kids. At the point in which you say yes, and for those of you who've already said yes to a phone, if you haven't already had this conversation, please do. There are a lot of things about that device that's really powerful, but one of the most powerful and beloved features of the phone is the camera that allows us to take selfies, that allows us to create those TikTok videos or YouTube videos, or take pictures of people and pets and places that we love. So definitely have fun with it. But one of the things that we have noticed, and we work closely with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, is particularly over the course of the pandemic, we've seen a rise in self-produced images and videos by young people. Videos and images they would not want the whole world to see. And so I think many of you know what I'm talking about. So please make sure you have conversations with your children to enjoy that camera, but to never, first of all, feel pressured into taking one of those kinds of images or videos of themselves by a peer certainly not by a stranger. And if they ever feel like that's happening to them, keep the door open for conversations that they can come to you without judgment that this is happening to them. They need to be supported if this moment arises. The second is that they certainly should not send around images like this if they're ever receive it. I did get a parent ask me once, what happens if my child receives one of those videos or images? I'm worried not just for him, but also because I pay for the phone. So it looks like it's coming to me, not to my child. What should we do? So our advice is, if that ever happens, again, keep the door open for a non-judgmental conversation. Make sure they tell you and then delete it. And then your action is to tell somebody else. It could be the parent of the child who's in the image, if you feel comfortable. It could be reporting it to the school if it's a classmate of your child's. But our advice is to not do nothing, because if for some reason that image went to multiple people, there will be an investigation and they're going to know it came to you. And again, the phone bill is in your name, not in your child's. So take the action rather than be caught having just not done anything about it. And certainly do never forward it on. Okay. The creation, possession, and distribution of images like this of underage people is technically a felony, but they're not going to prosecute young people the way they would if it was somebody who was 50 years old. We just want to make sure it's a kind of conversation I don't think is often raised among parents when they give their child a phone. So please make sure you have that conversation. And on gaming, I think, especially through the pandemic, but even before and now, it's not just the game itself. You know, we do worry. Anybody have a kid who struggles to stop the game, even when you tell them time's up? Does that happen to anyone out there? Right? I think that yeah, two pieces of advice I would give you. Number one, use some of the tools we talked about, because you can set time limits to how long they can be on that Xbox or the game if they're playing it on their mobile device. The second is to count down. Maybe some of you have said, hey, 30 more minutes, 15 more minutes, 10 more minutes. These are great tools too. But even then, you still have children saying, but I'm right in the middle of something. Can I just finish this level, right? How many times kids are negotiating for that extra time when they're gaming? So the one last piece of advice I would give is consider games with time limits. You know, a lot of the sporting games like FIFA and NFL, Madden NFL, the hockey, the basketball ones, these end. Rocket League is another great one that is very popular among young kids. It's also pretty fun. I'm terrible at it, but you know, you drive a car and you try and hit a soccer ball into a net, and the time runs out. So think about games. I think Minecraft is wonderful and has its reasons, but there's no end to it. So sometimes, again, kids who struggle to get off when you want them to get off is where your tools and your rules need to come into place. And finally, because so many games today are social, make sure you're looking at those privacy settings and you're comfortable with who they're connecting with over those games, because in some of those online gaming communities, it's complete strangers. So make sure you're comfortable with who they're gaming with. We now want to shift our attention to kindness. And again, if you have questions about anything we've talked about so far, please do put it in the Q&A in English or Spanish. And you know, what we want to say simply here is that you know, kids are reminded from the day they are born, from us, and then the first day they're at school, here's what it means to be a good friend. But for all of the reasons we talked about before, everything is collected, everything is recorded that we're doing online. So whatever we're doing, whatever we're saying, whoever we're connecting with and following, will reflect on us. And if someone were to take a look at all those actions, what kind of person will they think we are? So do it because it's the right thing, and also do it because it's basically a permanent record, whatever you're doing online. But kindness isn't just about saying nice things or being nice. It's also about understanding that there are differences about different families' rules, for example, rules about what they're allowed to post online or not. Have any of you ever had someone post something about you or a picture of you, unbeknownst to you, on their own social media page? How does it feel when someone does that and didn't really ask our permission? Well, this happens a lot in the middle school ages, and it very often can be the fodder for a lot of drama that may or may not turn into bullying situations. But, our advice is, when you first allow your children to start having a phone and using social media, at least with their close friends, encourage them to say, hey, are you okay if I put this up about us, this picture of us? Are you good with that? I think it's just a sign of respect. You don't know where someone else's lines of privacy are. And the same goes with rules and values. There are going to be some kids out there who are going to have a phone at 10 and 11, and others who will not be allowed until they're 14. And that's okay. But if your child is one of the kids who has a phone and starts creating group chats and text messages, but another friend is excluded because they don't have one yet, please encourage your child to say, hey, listen, if you're making plans, make sure you call this other person so they feel included as part of that plan making. Because not everyone's going to get a phone at the same time. Not everyone's going to get to play teen level video games at the same time. Not everyone's going to get to date or watch PG-13 movies at the same time. So the same goes with technology. We also talked about directing kindness inwardly. And I think very simply what we want to make sure that you are doing as parents, especially the early days of starting off in social media, reminding them, first of all, that social media has been designed for people to filter out the bad parts of their real life. And everyone just wants to present a most perfect version of the vacation they took, or the meal they just cooked, or, whatever is going on that they're up to. And it's not really the other parts of their lives, because most of our lives have messiness and perfect moments too. The second with young people is that they can get very caught up with what happens with social media. It is a rush when we post something and everybody else says, I like it, or they comment on your post. It makes us feel really good when that happens. We got to remind our kids, though, that their value is not equal to the likes and the shares and the comments that they're getting on any of their social media posts. We have to constantly show them and tell them that they are worth much more than that. Social media should not be a barometer of their value. And we as parents can do that by building them up in so many other ways in their lives. And also reminding them that social media, again, is not a true reflection of the real world or real people's real lives. So, as we've said many times before, be supportive. If they come across unkindness, make sure they have someone to turn to. All of the research shows that those children who experience adversity of some kind, but have people to back them up, whether it's a good set of friends, good family, great teachers, are able to bounce back. They have the ability to develop resilience. And it's the children who don't have someone to turn to that often end up getting into more trouble and are harmed. And as parents, we should be prepared, because kindness isn't just something that, unkindness isn't just something that could be directed to our own children. Certainly ask yourself, if someone was unkind to your child, what would you do? Hopefully it never happens. And the research shows that most children actually will not become victims of cyberbullying, but many, many children will witness it happening to someone else. So even in the case of witnessing, even in the case of being a bystander, we should support our children because it could be traumatic for them even as a bystander. So what would we do if our child was a victim of cyberbullying or witnessed it? And the other question to prepare yourself for is, what would we do if our own kid was the one being unkind to someone else? So think about those questions, reflect on those, maybe write down your thoughts of what you would or wouldn't do. And hopefully you'll never have to turn to them, but it is best to be prepared. And finally, not everything on the internet is awful. As much as we are swayed to believe otherwise, there are those moments where you find those stories where you yourself have experienced people's kindness online. So when you come across those moments, please share them with your children so they know that the internet is not only riddled with hate and vitriol and negativity and despair. There are good people and good things happening all the time.
Don't give up. We're getting towards the end.
We are. So we were going to bring it home here with the final section. And Ron, I don't know if you want to jump in here.
Sure. Just remember, not everything you see is real, because it's very easy for somebody to take one picture and post it as themselves, steal the content, and it's not real. They were never there. So we have to think about that. We also have to think about, all those things that we talked about and what's been in the news, fake news. So how do we think about this? We pause and ask questions before we take action, starting with, why was this material made? Who made it? What's missing? How might different people interpret it? How do I know this is true? Who might benefit from this message? So a lot of the headlines we see these days are sensational to try to get you to look at the story. That is on purpose, because these days our attention spans are so much shorter than they used to be, and media moves so fast they got to grab the headlines. So yes, media in general is very inflammatory on headlines. So why was it made? To get your attention. Who made it? Whoever is providing the content. What's missing? The details. How might different people interpret it? Some may believe it and some don't believe it. How do I know it's true? If it's true, we'll probably see it in multiple sources. Who might benefit from the message? Who might be harmed by the message? Are they trying to divide us even further? So we've partnered with, remind me the name of the media company.
Yes, the National Association for Media Literacy Education, namely, yes.
Yes. Go ahead. I just forgot
No
this
worries.
section.
Yes, we just want to point this out, parents, that your children are never too young to start developing great skills called media literacy skills, to be able to discern what is trustworthy and what is not online. Frankly, I think people of all ages could practice the skill. And we have a guide, it's very short, that we developed with Namely on our website, which we'll show you in a minute, that walks through scenarios that might happen, might be conversations that you actually have with your kids about misinformation and disinformation online.
So again, we're encouraging you to encourage them to have good habits. So the question is, go ahead and tell us in the chat, have you ever looked at yourself online? Have you ever Googled yourself?
And what did you find if you looked yourself up?
And what did you find when you looked it up? I'll tell you what I found. I found out that I'm a vice president of a medical equipment company based in California. No. He doesn't look anything like me at all.
Yeah. I have a cyber twin in California too. who owns I think like a hospitality industry business as well. Yes. I think we all have them.
So
Great.
one way you can do this is in Google, you can set up something called alerts. And you can find it by, the video shows us, typing in google.com/alerts. You can then set up a search that will automatically find certain words, certain keywords or phrases, and send you messages directly, weekly, daily, monthly, or as it happens, straight to your email. So I put my name in the news, and that's how I found out my doppelganger was promoted to vice president, because there was a news release saying that he had been promoted. And it's like, that wasn't me. Lynette, for example, can put in an alert for Trend Micro, where we work. So every time something searchable by Google, something published that can be cataloged, shows up, it can automatically send us alert. And that is, lots of news sources, public information, and things like that. All of those things can be cataloged. Any of that type stuff shows up in these alerts.
Yes. Anything that's behind privacy settings that's been posted about you or your children will not show up in a search engine result. So that is an argument to use privacy settings, because it would never show up in a search engine result. And the reason we think this is an important habit, good habit, is because when we've gone into classrooms and we've asked children, have you ever looked yourself up online? Many of them, first of all, say yes. And then we ask them if they found anything, and many of them say yes. Not all that stuff is bad, though. Sometimes they've made the news because they raised money for an important school event, or they were an athlete that performed really well, or they were in a play, some other reason that they were out there in the public. But it's good to do this so that you know if there's anything ever public out there about your children or you. The second is because you might find someone who shares your name, as we were saying earlier, your cyber twin. And that's great to know that you have them. Many of us have a cyber twin, someone who shares our name, but isn't us. But there could be someone who shares our name that is doing or posting things that are not so flattering. And we want to know who they are. We want to know that they exist so we can explain them away if we need to. So you don't have to go searching all the time. Just set up an alert and you'll get an email telling you, hey, something out there has been posted with your child's name attached to it. And another reason we bring this up is because we've been following this statistic for some time. Actually, I think since 2014. Okay. This is a study by the Kaplan Institute. For those of you who have, well, it doesn't really matter what age your oldest child is. At some point, they may consider college or university or postgraduate, studies. And the Kaplan Institute is that group that puts the SAT, the PSAT. They help with a lot of preparatory material, and they started to survey college admissions officers around the country. And one of the questions they asked way back then was, beyond the application, do you look up the student online to see what you can find? And in 2014, that answer was 25% said yes. Then the next year, 30, then 35, and so on. It just keeps going up. But about 2 years ago, they refined the question. So this past year, the most recent study done in February, 66% of the admissions officers said, yes, I would. If I needed to, I would. And of those who looked, 57% of them found something that convinced them this is not the student for us. By the same token, 38% found something that convinced them, yes, this is the student that we want in our community. So the reason we bring that up is because as much as you do all of the things we talked about tonight, use privacy settings, be careful with what you post, be a minimalist and all of that. If someone were to search your child, they may find nothing, and that would be okay. It wouldn't be harmful. But, consider the fact that if somebody else has figured out how to master the internet, how to show that they're doing things with technology or at all, and they're using the internet to help show that they're doing positive things, you hope one day that your child could be in that 38%. And that is why, as we said earlier, encouraging good uses is just as an important part of digital citizenship as is the long list of things of what not to do.
So rather than saying nothing, all these negative things, don't do this, don't do that, let's add, you can learn new skills.
Absolutely.
You can promote a cause. You can do fundraisers for nonprofits and things or important things, and you can showcase your accomplishments. So by encouraging these good uses, we're kind of hoping to develop those good things so that your child ends up in that green category when they get ready to go to college.
And my favorite is contests. I think it's an example of a good use of technology and of the internet, because not only because let's say they love making YouTube videos, they're a good writer, they are an artist, they're an aspiring musician, whatever it is. There are great contests out there for young people, and contests also help you manage and develop other skills like sticking to timelines, deadlines, going through the critique of a judging panel, right? Great experience. And hey, you might actually win at the end of it. And even if you don't, your child could begin to develop a whole portfolio of entries into contests as part of a way to showcase whatever it is they care about or have particular interest in, or might even have great talent in. So to sum things up, again, we believe that raising our kids to be great digital citizens is one of the most critical life skills that we can help our children develop. And to remember that the 4 areas we talked about tonight were about being online, but while they're there, helping them to be safe, to be kind, and to be savvy. And we want to encourage you, especially for those of you, many of you said you had children between the ages of, 6, 7, up to 10 or 11 years old. We've actually developed a cyber academy. These are short modules that talk a lot about the things we talked about tonight that your children can actually do online with you. Each of these modules is a short 2-minute-ish video followed by a Kahoot quiz, an activity sheet if you choose to print that out, and a conversation guide that you as parents can use to guide the conversation with them around these many issues. And we will continue to build out our library of the Cyber Academy. Love to hear your feedback about that. We also have several resources for you as parents at trendmicro.com/internet-safety. A lot of these resources are available in Spanish as well as several other languages. Our partners for tonight's event, PTO Today, also has quite a number of resources on their website at their teacherlist.com website. And we just want to encourage you to keep it going.
So what does it mean? It means stay active, share something that you've learned, communicate with your children, and stay up to date. Things are constantly changing. Pay attention. And most importantly, do one new thing. Start that conversation with your child. Install that software. Use this privacy settings. Take steps in that direction. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a step. So you don't have to do it all tomorrow, but start that journey tomorrow by doing one new thing. Be prepared. There will be bumps in the road. As long as you can stay open and keep that line of communication open without being judgmental when something happens. Be calm, address the issue, freak out later. After the child goes to sleep, then you can have your freak out. But when the child comes to you, don't freak out. Things you will proceed down the path and just keep going.
If you have any further questions, again, we please encourage you to put it in the Q&A. And when you leave tonight's session, and actually we're going to put this link in the chat, but usually when you close out of Zoom, immediately it will launch a web page showing you a very, very quick 3 minutes at most feedback form. We'd love to get your feedback. And as Ron mentioned earlier, in the sign-in sheet, and actually I'll ask our colleagues behind the scenes to post the sign-in link. If you didn't get to sign in at the beginning of the session, please let us know you were here. Or in the feedback form, either of these places, if you choose to include your email address, you'll be automatically entered to win one of 5 copies of Trend Micro Maximum Security free 1-year subscription covering up to 5 devices in your home, which includes phones, by the way, includes the iPhone, includes the Android phone.
Yeah, we have it on all our devices.
Awesome, thank you. And so I think if I could ask Kimberly or Marika to post the link for the survey in the chat, that would be awesome for the group to submit their feedback to us. Thank you so much for spending your evening with Ron and me. Lynette dialing in from New Jersey and Ron from
Texas.
And again, we'll stay on for a few more minutes if you'd like to submit any questions tonight. Finally, there's a web address at the bottom here. We are hosting these sessions throughout the school year. And so there's actually another one coming up next week. There's typically 2 or 3 per month. Thank you to Marcela, who was our Spanish interpreter, for being with us tonight. She actually was dialing in from London. So it was very, very late for her. You have a very distributed team here with you tonight. And if you know of anyone who missed the event and you think your school might want to attend another time with other people, please go to that website, click the events page, and you can see all the different dates that we have coming up in the future. We're obviously always accommodating with Spanish, but we're happy to consider many other languages if we have enough time to plan for that.
Also, it looks like a number of folks joined maybe an hour late, 20 minutes ago. So a recording of this presentation has been made and will be shared with the coordinator for your school of this event. And they'll be able to share that video with you if you missed the first half or want to see the whole thing again.
Absolutely. And great. It looks like there might be one question. I think the best way to ask us any questions is to put it in the Q&A if you have a question or comments, or put it in the chat. Thank you, Marlo. I like that. I like that camera icon actually in your comments in the chat. I don't know how to do that. That's a nice. That's a nice icon or yeah, emoji there. Well, wonderful. Again, thank you everyone for joining us tonight, and we hope that this was helpful for you. Please give us your feedback, and if you join late, again, as Ron said, there's a recording, but we'd also love to have you back at a future event if you'd like to attend it live. It's always a little different every time, and actually, we keep updating about the apps. When we were flying through all that information about apps, that tends to get updated very frequently. So even maybe 6 years not 6 years, six weeks from now, it might even change again. So we encourage you to keep on staying up to date, either by following us on our website or even coming back and being part of this event again in the future. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Marcella, and good night to you. It's so late for you in London. Thank you again for being with us. Thank you, Kimberly and Marika and our team who are helping us behind the scenes. Ron, it was great to see you again.
Yep. We
Always
did this
fun.
last night too.
Yes, we did. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.